Uh, okay. Test, test, test. Ah, there we go. Oh god, you got to be kidding. Hopefully this didn't go on the last show. I
Oh no, I need to go look at those and see.
Yeah.
I haven't
Well,
downloaded.
welcome to episode 43. No, I'm almost 100% positive the last episode was because I was using a different input on the video. I did see the move things moving. But anyway, so this is episode 43 or 44. I used to run another show. We ran into these same issues where I ran everything on autopilot mode and was not sure whatever was going on. Not sure what platform I want to get this thing on, but it's starting to sound like Spotify may not be the place of choice. I'm looking into Speaker FM and whatever onto possibly getting replayed onto. I don't know. We'll see how it goes because I'm not really interested in money. I'm just really interested in just getting the info out there, and I'm not going to try and regurgitate a lot of the. I'm going to try and step away from regurgitating what everybody else is saying on Twitter or X or whatever, because this is not only a show about UFO. It's all about the paranormal, science, physics. Anything is beyond the norm. It could be about politics, hence the term beyond the pendulum, beyond the norm. But I, um, where do we even start? It's been a week hiatus. I put in some show notes and very loosely remember what the fuck I had typed. Uh, but I believe there was some other stuff that I didn't cover in the on the last show, and I don't know, and this could be my bad that I didn't cover it, but there was some stuff in and I don't know who's not telling the truth. It could be the whole David Grush thing, and there is some evidence that he might have not have been telling the truth when it comes to him and Arrow. And there's also some things that he said that are also kind of muddying the waters. I really want to know why. Apparently, him lying about them meeting Arrow, that's fine. That's number one. But apparently, I believe it wasn't Carl Nell, but it was somebody else who was representing him as his lawyer, and somebody asked him, whether or not Grush could release the whatever. Apparently, there was some mediation between whatever the ICIG knew, which was the investigative arm of the intelligence community. Um, he could have released that report to Arrow and to others without breaking DOPSR or any kind of security clearance. And apparently, all David Grush needed to say was that he could have released that information. And now it's kind of like a WTF moment. Like, now I don't know who's telling the truth and who's telling the fiction, but there are. So, I'm not going to throw him into the I'm done with him pile, because there's enough over the years, and I'm old enough now to know many more things that have and some of my childhood heroes, like Art Bell. I remember, him even talking about, and other countless people that have come along the way since I've been alive, that have said some things that are actually kind of not stuff that you can just kind of throw out there willy nilly. Like a lot of people don't believe in Colonel Koso, the day after Roswell, but there's enough documentation out there to say that maybe he was, he probably might have been telling the truth. It might not have been a psyop. And, there's a lot of deathbed conventions or confessions. So whether or not David is doing a disservice or an intelligence agent or a psyop, it's not helping him career wise. So I'm not going to put that out there unless he never left the intelligence community, and that would be a whole nother ball game. But this is strike number two. Then there might be some other issues that I don't know about him. Another weird thing that has come up, and I heard this on that UFO podcast, and I honestly thought the Nazca mummies were fake. Okay? 100% thought that those little itty bitty things were fake. And now they've been doing from apparently 6 different labs. And there's an independent journalist that's kind of heading the head research. And this guy's well known. I've never heard of him because honestly, I don't really follow whatever he's writing. I'm probably not following, and I really couldn't tell you a writer off the top of my head other than the books that I've read. But there's 6 different labs are saying different things now. Some of the mummies are carbon dated 1,000 years, and then there's a hand that is much bigger that is at least 6,000 years old. And apparently there is something that has not been on display, but is somewhere in this mummy thing, that there is a mantis. Like, they've been saying about the praying mantis things, that are watching people getting the medical abductions. Apparently there was a mantis mummy somewhere, and the DNA is not human. I can tell you that much from what they're gathering. Now, there is some evidence that there is this is not what I would expect if you were going to a lab, but there is evidence of some sort of CRISPR, some sort of CRISPRing, like putting different kinds of DNA into a thing, and that we might be looking at not aliens, but some sort of prehistoric, some ancient, some sort of ancient, genetic manipulation. So
you're heading towards the ancient alien theory, or there was there's a lot of evidence for some kind of genetic intervention, like 50, 70,000 years ago. There's kind of an explosion in there that doesn't quite add up.
Well, yeah, they're finding evidence of monkey. They're finding evidence of giraffe. Like I was kind of surprised about that. I was like, there's like, and these are like different labs calling the same thing.
Oh, I got it.
So I don't know. Yeah, duh. I don't know what to make of all of it, but there's evidence of a kind of a CRISPR. Please. There's evidence of some sort of genetic modification, and would make sense because the smallest of the mummies are saying that it couldn't support its own weight. I highly believe that. Sorry, my kids just got in here.
Having a big time there.
Yeah. But I thought the goddamn things were fake, so I don't know what to make heads or tails of it. I couldn't tell you. We actually thought they were fake,
Well, there are so many fakes. I mean, and that's the problem, and it's gotten I don't know that it's gotten any easier on the faker. I think it's gotten harder for them, but at the same time, it's just they either have the gene sequence or they don't.
Yeah.
It's like UFO disclosure. Let's just get to the nuts and bolts here and
Yeah.
like get on with it. But they sure like to parade these things out, and at the same time, maybe that's the funny, weird way our governments have it figured out that they're going to disclose things. We can't, maybe we just can't tell the truth. We got to give you the soft
Well,
50
that's
years of kind of
see that.
nonsense, kind of ease you into the idea.
Well, see, that's the weird thing is that that's the weird thing is that the Peruvian government tried to snatch these things up from Jaime, from the crew, and these things were sitting in a. Apparently, the backstory is these things were sitting in some sort of Peruvian museum, like in the back and shit, and they didn't. They didn't have any sort of. They kept on telling people that these things were glued together, and there was evidence of resins and all that, keeping these things together, and
Mhm.
none of that was true. Absolutely none of it. So, that conspiracy theory about John Graham Graham Hancock, and the ancient apocalypse, and now we're finding out, and I've been listening to some not well known people out there in these ancient archaeological people who study ancient things that you've never heard of, and a lot of them are kind of saying the same thing, that there is evidence of a pre-ice age pre-ice age, not at the end of the ice age. There are stuff that was built, but there is evidence out there of pre-ice age structures. And we've been finding, in a recent one we just found in Zimbabwe, a 700,000 year old structure built by somebody in Zimbabwe.
Hmm.
So the history of man might be older than we thought. And what they've all been concluding to is a the flood myth might be true, and mankind might have this history of repetitive, apocalyptic ending and restarting again every 15,000, 30,000 years. We get smacked by something, and there's evidence of this, and we find this in the Taurid meteor cloud, which was they think was the one that hit us 15,000 years ago, and they just found that comet out there that was part of the Taurid meteor cloud. They call it Eid or whatever. It's a 3 mile wide object. It used to be 10 times that big before part of it broke
Hmm.
apart and slammed into Earth. So
Yeah. Now,
there
as
would
far
be
as like the ice ages and all, I mean, that's a much longer cycle,
yeah.
hundreds of thousands of years, but there is evidence of these, if you just go back to what they know about the ice age civilizations, the Indian government has all but, confirmed that sunken city off the coast, Dorka,
Yeah,
there
Dorka.
is like that ancient city of Shiva that,
It used to be a
so
continent. It used to be a continent out there called Mu, or
yeah, and
and there
it's
was
like
Lamar, and there
200
was
foot down. You're talking, thousands of years ago. There was a city there
they
on an
used to,
ancient coastline, thousands of years ago.
I think they called it
I think
Lemuria.
10,000.
Lemuria. It was a continent that we used to exist, and it doesn't anymore because it's
Yeah,
400 feet of water.
yeah, Mu and Lemuria. Yeah,
And this there's our history might be inaccessible to with our current technology, but I think if we want to find, and I think this is where these people that I've been hearing and reading about are coming to the conclusion, if we want to find out our more ancient history, we need to stop digging on the surface and start looking at the bottom of these oceans, which is much
yeah. Further,
difficult.
further out. No, no. Well, like the Baltic Sea, there's other, inland seas that are pretty good. I mean, they're finding stuff there too, but yeah, need to look deeper.
Because there's at least three continents that we know of that used to exist that are completely underwater, and the Philippines and Indonesia
Mm.
are part of that. You know.
You know, the other one is Antarctica. I mean, you talk about a place that has had almost zero serious like investigations of anything. I mean, you have some fossils. They know there was ferns there at some point, and however the continent slipped and got its way to the South Pole, uh, it wasn't always there. And there's a story there too that you never really get to. Other than they found oil, we got everybody arguing about because they found more Antarctic oil, and so that's what's really important.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence, and I've heard about this is that that I'm not going to say that they aren't hiding in anything in Antarctica, but it's very strange that even the scientists are only allowed to view 10 to 20% of what is actually there. Most of the continent is completely unexplored, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and then there's some kind of exclusion zone from
Yep.
like the 60th parallel on. It's
Hmm.
just like, why? What the fuck's that all about?
Well, you've heard about Operation High Jump, right? And the conspiracy around that
Oh yeah,
when
yeah,
we
yeah. The German UFOs and that's just hard to believe. When you're in the middle of a war, to honestly believe that they did all that stuff. It's just, I don't know, man. It's a great story, but
there's
there might be something now with the high jump story, and from our end going down there. I mean, if there's something weird going on,
Well, there is something weird that doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. Is that there's unknown neutrino emissions that are coming essentially from the ice for no fucking reason, and that's not common knowledge.
I hadn't heard that yet.
Yeah, yeah. About 100,000 events a year. Yeah, and we only get smacked with 100 or so interstellar neutrino blasts. But or is it neutrino or is it neutrinos because they're yeah. Wait, yeah, neutrinos. Yeah, but it's very strange that the ice would be emitting something like that, and we really don't understand the whole mechanisms that would even be going on there. We do have a device out somewhere out in there, but it's nowhere near to these exclusion zones, and really doesn't make any sense to me and a lot of other people. Is why would you not want the rest of the continent to be explored if there's no habitat that it's impending on other than frozen microbial life that's in stasis mode. I understand that that it's under some sort of agreement with the other continents, but that wasn't always the case. Actually, the United States wanted Antarctica for itself.
Oh yeah, now that's going to be a big, especially with this oil find and everything. You have what like 7 or 8 countries that make a claim to Antarctica, and I mean, it's like, give me a break. It's if there's nobody there, nobody can claim it. That's to be for everybody, you would think, But we're going to get in a war over that, guaranteed at some point.
Well, yeah, especially now that they found 50 trillion gallons of
Yeah, it's
oil over there, and I don't know how the Russians found that other than because they say I keep on hearing this fucking poppycock thing that we don't have satellites that have cameras or any kind of sensors at the South Pole, and that's why we don't have any real satellite pics of what's at the South Pole. And I'm not saying there's a fucking hole there, but there is, because I know for a goddamn fact that you can use LiDAR, you can use certain acoustic waves, and that's essentially how you find oil without spending a shit ton of money. Now, lo and behold, you wouldn't, probably a satellite wouldn't be the best way of doing it, but flying a drone or whatever. So there is something that the Russians had flown over that area that was able to use one of these techniques. Now, can you do it with radio? Yes, you can. I've heard that it's possible. I just don't know the physics behind it, but I suspect it has to deal with the same things that they were using when they were using the harp kind of tech, where you were bouncing stuff off the ionosphere and to probe a little bit into the soil, and using some sort of other sensor to see how far these things are penetrating. But there are ways of finding it, and there is the governments are lying to you, essentially all of them.
Well, the seismic, if you have any seismometers, over a period of time, you'll have enough quakes to kind of start to see what's going on. Plus all the ones that you could, set off yourself, seismic charges, and then I'm betting they're drilling down there, dude. They're taking ships down there and doing seabed drilling and all the rest of it, finding out where all this shit is. That's what's going on. All these companies and the big wheels, and have for probably almost 100 years now, been in on it down there, figuring out how they're going to, keep it all for themselves. Because the whole thing is an exclusion process. The first thing is to exclude most of the countries that can even, allegedly even make a claim and go down there, and then everybody, cutting up their piece of the pie, and it's just a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
Because they got their, in my way of thinking, it's just let the ice melt. You send a bunch of ships down there, drill for a little bit, just take samples here and there and figure out what you got.
Well,
It's not really, it's actually part of a military mission. It's a commercializing process as well, but, so uses, but that's all part of the military process here, figuring out who's got what and where everything is and who's controlling it.
yeah. I mean, it's bigger than the. I heard Antarctica is technically bigger than Europe and the United States together. It's big. It's much bigger than it is being represented on the maps too.
Mm-hmm. And there's, I mean, nobody's touched the place, and then the kind of terrain that's down there, the mountains and everything, there's minerals. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out sooner. Or kids will.
They'll meter it out to you over time. You find out everything, 50, 100 years later, like, oh yeah, we were really down there mining and doing all this other stuff clandestinely, couldn't tell you because, you're just a bunch of slaves, and we need to keep the mushrooms fed well. And it's like everything. It's just, waiting on UFO disclosure, waiting on the Kennedy assassination, on and on. We're just not worthy. We're just not worthy citizens of having disclosure. That's the problem. Somebody has decided that we're not worthy.
Yeah, I'm very tempted to. There was a guy who was able to hack into NOAA. Not no, he wasn't able to hack in, but he was able to get raw unprocessed image from a NOAA satellite. I'm wondering if NOAA also tracks weather at the South Pole. It'd be interesting.
I'm sure they do. Yeah,
Because there's been some weird anomalies that people have pointed out on Reddit, and there's just one where there is an island or region close to one of, I think it's Easter Island, not Easter Island, or McDonald Island, some of the one that's closest out there, and there is an anomaly that does show up where there's a blacked out weather patterns consistently in this one area in the south and in near the south near Antarctica, and I'm just it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I think this is probably just something that people should be paying more attention to, and to be realistic, I don't think that you're going to find any real information out there through regular conventional methods, and unfortunately trying to get the information might involve something illegal, and I don't recommend anybody that, but just keep in mind that there is, I don't know, tens of thousands of satellites orbiting Earth, and a lot of them are broadcasting out. You don't necessarily have to hack into these things, but you do need to know how to receive it. I think the hams out there and the radio enthusiasts know what I'm aiming at, but just keep an eye out, you know. Look for that
Yeah.
waterfall. Look for that waterfall spike, you know.
I just, after, now if anybody has a base down there, let's be honest, as much money as we spend, it's probably us. Because we spend 10 times as much as everybody else, you know, you have all those, scientific expeditions from, quite a number of countries now that are down there permanently.
Yeah,
But
like Mercury
got
Station.
to be more than that going on. I mean, just knowing this military, at least a submarine base, that'd be a great place for a submarine base.
Well, apparently the Nazis had one out there for a good decade. You know.
Yeah, that story's getting harder to believe.
Well,
But they do make a claim. Germany is one of the countries that makes a claim down there. I
yeah.
think it's Norway, us, Russia,
Australia, New
UK.
Zealand.
Yeah, it's just it's a select few who get
Russians are
the.
out there too. So are the Koreans.
So that's going to be a bigger, at some point. But when they do start pulling a lot of material wealth out of there, then it's going to be like, well, hey, how come you guys get it? Well, what's the deal here? This ought to be for everybody.
Well, speaking of which, it's a weird conspiracy theory that the Chinese were able to land something on the dark side of the moon. You know, that's supposedly where, Edgar, not Edgar Mitchell. It's the sleeping prophet, Edgar Casey, I believe.
Casey,
Yeah, said that there was on the dark side, on the other side of the moon, there were buildings and stuff, alien tech on the other side of the moon. So if it's out there, they'll find it. Chinese.
no, didn't I hear that they're supposed to bring rocks back? This whatever lander or whatever it was going to bring stuff back.
Yeah, there's they're testing for they're trying to find the hydrolyzed mineral which contains water. We have a lot of hydrolyzed mineral here on Earth, actually more so than there is in the oceans, but a lot of it's trapped in minerals and sediment, and that's what's going on the moon, and they want to test for that, just to make sure that what Chandra was reporting, which is the Indian satellite, is actually true. But I suspect it's a 53-day mission, and they do have a satellite relaying the information in data bursts back and forth. But I suspect there are there is aspects of those missions that are not going to be public or public knowledge. It's just really strange. Nobody's landing on the dark side of the moon. Nobody's had any missions to the dark side of the moon. It's the same thing when we're looking for life on Mars in all the wrong places. If you want to find life on Mars, go to the poles. Okay, There's ice on the pole.
Yeah, go to what the water is now. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that does make sense.
yeah. There's
Well, it had all the where we even where they're going now. All the conditions were there. At some point there was running water on the surface, and billions of years ago, whatever. I mean, it's so chances are something got started. There's a lot of CO2 coming out too. The other clue that there's something going on is that CO2 because it keeps getting replenished, and it seems to be coming out a lot of these holes and caves. So there's at least some bacteria, or something going on in those kind of structures.
yeah. I wouldn't.
And they don't go there. It's just like, well, what the fuck.
Yeah, just like how they said that there was that they had a dead pixel that were showing up in different parts of the frame in different frames, going on for 700 or so different frames. I just don't. I just don't know. Well, I think that's what we call, NASA never a straight answer, because a lot of times a lot of this just doesn't isn't making a lot of sense. Until people said, why are you using a red filter for the sky when the sky is actually a blue gray from a CO2 from the CO2. And people have pointed this out that they've been doctoring photos for years. NASA is not is it's a waste of money giving them anything. They're not really doing anything for they're I would loosely call them a civilian aerospace agency. Loosely. It's more of a DoD operation on the back end.
Well, yeah, it sure started that way. It was all research pilots, back in the old days, and I mean, still is kind of. I mean, it's you have other skills getting in there now, but
Even
yeah,
now,
it's
even now, there was a lot of weird stuff that didn't make any sense. Like, why the fuck did they just why the fuck did they shoot Cassini into Saturn? Like, why the fuck would you do that when you could have had the operation going on indefinitely? You know?
well. See, what's the reasoning there? I guess you're you know you're. I think that was like a normal death of a satellite. Honestly, if you're constantly, like spiraling in, using up all your fuel, at some point, it's inevitably going to end like that, especially if you're, just a fact finding and just taking pictures and whatnot. Um, could go, could it go on indefinitely? I suppose so. Yeah. I mean, we need more satellites out there doing longer term stuff. We do a lot of flybys and
Well, there's also evidence, they've been pondering this recently, is that the rings on Saturn might not be as old as previously even thought.
that's true. Yeah. It's really ice coming out of those, planets, the volcanic ice planets,
And
or the moons rather, that are feeding the ring.
there are
Because
planets
as fast as they disperse, they're getting replaced because they wouldn't last that long otherwise.
well, there's also a few moons they found inside of those rings,
True.
which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I've heard 100,000 years, and I've heard even less.
Yeah, millions, 100 times. I guess it's hard to tell. When you don't. They haven't really looked at it. Maybe to understand the process there. I mean, it has to be trailing particles. There's a loss and then a gain at the same time. Within the ring system, and that's going to be you're going to have to look at just that and see where the material is coming in and out. It's on over a longer period of time.
Yeah, exactly.
We got rings around Uranus. There's some other too, but
The ring around Uranus.
yeah. Should wipe that. Don't let it stay there too long.
Just wipe it downstairs. But there's I just don't understand. Once we start privatizing space, and I think that's why they're gearing us up towards this, buttering us up to the fact that we might not be alone here in our solar system or even our planet, is because they're starting to privatize space, and it's only a matter of time before the bullshit stories stop, because we aren't suffering from time compression, we aren't suffering from mirages. People, or not all of the people out there, are schizophrenic liars. There's more and more evidence that we're finding, even on the molecular level, that the reality isn't even real at a fundamental level. It's bleeding more towards more of a simulation theory. I mean, it seems to be the way that they're studying matter and these quantized what they call superposition, or random patterns that could or could not happen. It's starting to be lead more towards the reality not being the way that we think that it actually is, and I think that's might be the real reason that terrifies the government, if it were all true. And it might be a form of control, but that would terrify the public if you told them that kind of shit. Like, I tell my friend those things, these kind of theories, and a little more than theories at this point, because there are scientists even saying this, and this is how we are embracing the quantum level technology that's right around the corner, is understanding these concepts, and how they're defying the normal random, the normal everyday physics that we know, and that might scare the shit out of people. It really will. I mean, if you tell them that that your reality isn't what you think it is, and it might be what I've said before. It might all be like let me see.
The simulation, you mean? Or
It's more than a simulation, but I've heard of there's stuff, that gravity might not be an actual particle. It might be part of the what they call entropy, or fundamental the fundamental coding of reality, and that these things that people call zero point energy might be consciousness at its most lowest level, and this is the reason that we can't ever get particles to absolute zero, because we have these quantum fields and particles that appear and disappear out of reality, and we call them virtual particles. But these quantum fields, they're thinking the
now the
reason.
field. What gets me about that, though, is the quantum field seems to be everywhere all the time.
Yes.
And in order to have a field, you have to be excited, usually from an exterior source.
Exactly, but when they're
If you think of it
it's
as if it's so, if is it a field or not? Because if it's a field, then there's something else going on.
exactly, that's what they're starting to realize,
And
and I've heard rumors, and a lot of the academic institutions don't want to push this out there, because they're going to have to change their books, and it'll scare the shit out of people. Is that these quantum fields may actually be consciousness, and this might be what these people that were investing into zero point energy, and that would make sense why it makes no sense that you can tap into something that is fundamentally a piece of reality that you can't touch, you can't taste, you can't feel, but if you use the right tech, you can get unlimited energy from it, which defies the laws of physics, and that scares the shit out of people. You know, like That would scare the shit out of the religions. That would scare the shit out of normal everyday people. That everything that you've known and everything you've been told is bullshit. And that would scare people.
Well, yeah, it would depend on the disclosure. Now, if when disclosure finally happens, you find out that they really knew all this shit, like say 200 or 300 years ago.
Yeah.
Now you got a reason to be pissed off. It's like, well, wait a minute, well, why are you slowing everything down that much? I mean, it's like, you know, uh, is the need for control that that bad, so severe that you just, or you're that fearful of, or
Well,
that's the claim, just claim fear, because I mean that worked great during COVID. It was just, claim that that there's this fear about the UFO, and we can just lock it down because hey, that's fear, that's a powerful thing, and we can't let that loose.
well,
Uh,
that's what would also stump the scientists if you don't adopt this other dark side of physics that explains why we can't stop particles into its tracks from vibrating. And there's something that's there at the quantum level. And if you don't want to embrace it, you don't understand. So, what we might actually be seeing in these UFOs might not actually be neither here nor there. And they might actually be, if consciousness is all that there is and everything's a simulation upon simulation upon simulations, if two
hmm.
people are focusing on another simulation, they are essentially creating the phenomenon. That would scare people. That, I mean,
Okay, I see what you got.
yeah,
Maybe you get, it's the, what do you call that?
you're creating your own reality with your thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, that would bother people.
That would bother
Um,
people.
I tend to think they're more, well, my problem, my first thought is that they're projections, or it's something, that comes through the medium, whatever they're using, and it's just a projection of something. It might seem real to us because it's a 3D projection, let's say, but
It,
at the same time, how then do they show up on radar? Because that's like, you're seeing it on one end, and yet the radar's picking it up. Now we're at different frequencies, different methods, and you're seeing an object.
well,
So,
that would,
that's hard to say that that's, this misty projection or something. It tends to think that okay, this is like an alien craft, which could still be from a lot of stars and planets around here.
true.
I mean, if these guys can scoot around and do what they do, it's quite possible they're coming from fairly far away.
Or they might not
But
be coming from that far at all. The whole interdimensional thing isn't really as far fetched as you would think. If you could travel through, let's say, the fifth dimension, and that fifth dimension is only the size of a football field, and that's the universe on a on a fifth dimensional scale, and you could travel transmedium. You could be from here to the other side of the universe, and you said, hello, you know, and it,
yeah, and then it's really okay. You're well, you could argue, are you in the same dimension? I mean, you're still something physical. You might be at an elevated dimensional state, but you're still a physical being, in the fifth dimension, or where I mean, we might not see it that way,
well,
but that they would be.
there's evidence of that. I've even heard of people manufacturing these larger crafts being particle accelerators and manufacturing clues-climb particles surrounded around the ship and traveling interdimensionally and transmedium. Because if you were manufacturing particles that can only be part of clues-climb particles are I kind of have a gist about it, but it is the way I understand it. It is a particle that is essentially not really part of our dimension, and they found it out indirectly by smashing particles together, and this particle essentially is probably from somewhere else, some other higher dimensional plane, and if you could find a way to manufacture this in a ship and surround yourself around it with the ships, you could probably be ghosts within reality, and you're neither here nor there. That's scary too. And if entropy is the explanation of what gravity is, it is a programmed into reality. And if you could tap into these quantum fields or into the lower levels of reality, you could control gravity. And that's where these 0 point energy claims have gone over year after year, that the reason they suppressed any tech. And there's been plenty of dead people trying to put patents, dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens. They all end up with bullets in their heads or poison themselves. And some of the stories are absolute poppycock, and there are ones that I don't think there are. And if the law of thermodynamics is flawed because fundamentally reality doesn't work at the lower levels the way that modern physics would probably explain why these people end up dead. Just like you, if you had something that you could build with unlimited power, and if you could tap into it and adjust it just a little bit, you could also create anti-gravity. I think there would be a lot of reasons that they would want to suppress stuff like that. And
Well,
I don't,
yeah, commercially steal your idea. The government's going to come at you because it's a national security
yeah.
issue. So my right there. I mean, you're probably dead already just between those two. Steal your idea. It happens all the time.
Oh yeah, there's the Patents Secrecy Act. It was in, I think it was made in around 46 or 56, somewhere around there. And if you design something that is more than 80% efficient, you cannot sell it to the general public if it revolves around energy or energy conversion or anything like that. If it converts energy more than 80% for proficiency, right? You cannot sell it to the general public. You can only sell it to the United States government. That's it.
Uh,
I mean, a lot of this isn't common knowledge, but a lot of people have tried to file patents, and this isn't public knowledge, and this isn't common knowledge. But you can file a patent, and they will, they can classify your patent, and they will force you. They would probably strong arm you to give it away to them for free, or else. And you don't want to know what happens to or else. And there's a long line of inventors going on spanning 40, 50 years that have mysterious deaths. Oh, there's
yeah, you see it within politics. People that know too much. You get too close to certain people, or you know too much, you get whacked. Or you think you're going to talk and make a big stink. No, you're just going to get whacked. It's just
I
it
think
happens more and more. It used to be rare. Now you see it all the time. The Clintons finally broke the ice on that one. It's
I think that UFOs and all of that. I think that's only that's only that's only at a surface level. I could see them being more concerned about the power and the implications. You know that I could see them actually suppressing, but the alien tech is only a piece of the puzzle. It's what in those things is the real secret.
yeah, you're looking for the power unit.
The power unit,
That's it.
exactly.
Yeah, because if you figure that out, you're gold. It's well, are you really? I mean, because then everybody's going to be out to kill you for the idea or whatever you built.
Exactly.
You almost have to keep it secret for a while and somehow protect yourself. I don't know if that's even possible.
There's probably no place in this world you could hide that they couldn't find you.
Yeah, I mean, with all these crash recovery teams, I mean, the chances of you getting with now, if it's a small one, maybe you can get away with it. But if it's a big craft, forget it. You know, they're just going to come in, point a gun at you, and you're going to leave. You know,
Well, you've heard about the guy that did the documentary on the ARVs, on the alien reproduction vehicles. The the bio guys that was going around in the '90s, and then there was a documentary. The guy
hmm.
who spilled the cookies on the ARV, he committed. They said he committed suicide, but he said the same thing. You know, if I ever end up dead, I didn't kill myself. He's dead. So did the guy who did the documentary. And the guy that did the documentary, when he ended up dying, he died from an advanced form of cancer. And when they did an autopsy on his blood, there were lots and lots of radioactive isotopes in his bloodstream.
Yeah, you see, I mean, that seems to be a Russian way to, the Putin
Yeah.
way to kill people. All his enemies end up with some kind of, rare, you know, uh, radiological product, found on them that only comes from like one lab. Pretty obvious, but it seems to be their way of doing it. Yeah, they
Yeah,
get rid of you all the time. I mean, and that's just for because you get a little too mouthy as a political dissident. I mean, so you don't think they'll kill you to find UFO tech that you've got figured out? Fuck yeah,
well,
you're dead meat.
well, he was the one probing on Lockheed Martin on their ARV and their ARV engines, and did accidentally get somebody to open up their mouth, and he claimed he never got it on camera, but he did hear it verbally when he was talking to one of them. And he said they basically had told them that they couldn't give up their secrets like that because A, it's classified, and B, it gives them a competitive edge. And he's just because he said that he basically made them angry enough to the point where they said that, which is another way that journalists get the truth out. So, and he was that guy, and he's dead.
No, there's all this going on. Well, look at like the Boeing. We got a bunch of Boeing whistleblowers that are they're getting killed, just for safety problems on an aircraft. I mean, they will get rid of you, man.
Yeah, look what happened.
That's gotten easier to do apparently, or they don't mind even looking suspicious about doing it anymore. That used to be a rare thing. Now it's like you see people dropping left and right, and then it's like, oh well, all the witnesses are dead. I guess we could throw this, out of court now.
Yeah.
Kind of just ends the whole process.
Yeah, unfortunately, I got to end this show. My wife's gonna get start yelling at me again. But
All right,
we'll do the show on the next show on the 20th, and we'll go from there.
all right, sounds good.